want to move to the jungle now. And Sheepy, I'm gonna go straight to you because you were so gung ho about talking about it, at least relative to the top lane. And maybe that's how we talk about it first. We consider the fact that the jungle is the position that affects every other lane on the map. As the meta is developing for all of these lanes, how do we feel it's affecting the jungle?
Well, the biggest one I think is the old lady Rek'Sai has been nerfed. The armor, has gotten down way more.
Yep.
The tunnels is now way higher cooldown, and also the ultimate is 30 seconds extra. So all of this is really well placed because this champion has just been so dominant the entire time. And this really opens up for more aggressive junglers. I think that all the junglers like Nidalee, Elise, Graves, maybe even Lee Sin will show more. And then you just have top laners as well that maybe like in counter matchups can get those easy kills. So I think a way more aggressive style will develop over in Worlds.
Yeah, I think you really want jungle dominance. Those hard farmers like the Nidalee, like the Graves, are definitely going to run over Rek'Sai. But Rek'Sai is still something that I think is pickable. And with Gragas being something that got hit and completely, honestly obliterated and, pushed down the tier list very far,
right.
Lee Sin is that new Gragas. Because Gragas was the new Lee Sin, and now I think Lee Sin's back.
Well, so I think that's an important thing to establish is that the jungle meta was dominated by Gragas and Rek'Sai for this split for so long, right? With the likes of Graves and Nidalee kind of being behind them, but still so much focus on those two, and Elise as well. Less so here in NA than in other regions. Maybe that's why I'm forgetting it, because NA players don't love her for some reason. But, with those two top tier champions falling out, does that mean that the others just rise in priority, or is there, as we mentioned, Lee Sin got a small buff to his W, so that makes him slightly more viable?
I think it definitely does. I think the biggest thing is that Gragas and Rek'Sai kind of oppressed other junglers. Like, you have to be as good in terms of utility or clear or ganking as those two. And that's an incredible burden to put on a jungler. Now, even after Rek'Sai saw, I think this is his 8th nerf in a row, he's still what I consider to be a very good jungler.
Right.
Except for now he has abusable windows where if you do mess up, it's not as easy to recover as it was before.
Right.
I think that immediately what comes to the top of my head is I think that, you'll see a lot more of these aggressive junglers, maybe stuff that ganks a lot easier, stuff like Zac is seeing a lot of play in relation to the fact that Gragas and Rek'Sai don't initiate as well anymore. Now you have Zac, probably the best mid lane ganking champion in the game, in my opinion, coming to fruition, I guess, again.
Nothing's more annoying than having to change the way you ward specifically for a champion pick, like Zac, because all of his engage ranges are so different than every other jungler. That's why he's such a great mid lane ganker.
Yeah, and I think Evelynn is also in that same category of changing the way you ward. And I think somebody like Clearlove would probably bring out the Evelynn in this tournament. With the nerfs to Rek'Sai, Rek'Sai was a big counter because you can track her without wards just being in the vicinity. And with the removal of those two hard CC junglers in Rek'Sai and Gragas, you have now all of these junglers with low CC, actually just fighting each other, brawling, and it's highly mechanical here. Elise is really that S tier one that has CC, and then Zac, and then everybody else. It's like Graves, Nidalee, Evelynn. These guys are just going to be brawling in each other's faces, and Lee Sin, right? So now dodging skill shots, making sure you don't get hit, is going to be very important. So skill cap.
That's where the pairing between top and jungle becomes interesting for me. The fact that there are these more just straight damage-oriented junglers that don't have the CC, I would imagine you're going to have to find more CC in the rest of your lanes.
Like Kennen.
Like Kennen,
Renekton.
right? Or Renekton, right? But in terms of early ganking potential, you had talked about pairing something with Kennen. Well, Kennen's got at least a little bit of CC. That makes it so that you can bring a Nidalee to the game and still get a gank off without having to have a flash body.
You don't always have to have the playmaking potential on the lane. As long as you have one lane to kind of snowball over, that is really great. So if you just have a top lane pushing matchup that needs jungle pressure, you don't necessarily need to gank there and snowball the lane. But just generally having one lane that is really strong is just so important with the jungle matchups. And now that you have the aggressive ones, and if every lane is picking so aggressive, we might see games snowball really quickly out of control.
Yeah, and if something like a Nidalee or Graves shows up top lane to a pushed lane, it's like, I'm going to take your turret. Nidalee will increase the attack speed, Graves just shreds turrets anyway, and they'll just throw pop shots at you over and over again until they hit you or chunk you out.
And Graves will just go in your jungle with your behind, and Rek'Sai can't do anything because
what happened to champions like Hecarim and Olaf? Why are they?
I think Olaf may see.
I think Olaf is actually still really, really good. So
Okay.
with the onset of Elise, I think Elise is the S tier pick right now because she can gank very, very well any lane. She sets up all the plays herself. She can dive. She can do essentially everything except for, I guess, she's a little bit weak in 1v1 skirmishes if she doesn't get the jump. Olaf is a champion that can just steamroll champions who he gets the jump on. And I think that we'll see Olaf actually come as like maybe a counterpick to stuff like Elise, or maybe I even think he does very well into Lee if he gets that lead. And so I'm really interested because Olaf has been not seen too much out in other regions. I think I've seen a decent amount in North America and not too much in anywhere
Thank
else.
you, Rainover. Yeah, Rainover and a
Smithy.
few others. Dardoch as well played it. Yeah, Smithy played it. Okay, so those, Hecarim though we think mostly fallen out of meta here.
Yeah, he got some nerfs, and he's just too carry oriented
And also if
for
Shen is-
what he ends up doing.
Yeah, and also if Shen is falling out, the Shen
Yeah.
Hecarim combo that was really forced and a lot of times is kind of
Yeah.
falling out.
That's fair. All right, let's do the same thing we did with the top lane. Let's kind of try and stack rank a little bit our junglers. You had mentioned that you would put Elise S tier. She's #1 now. How do the rest of the champions fall after that?
Ooh, I think I like Elise. I don't know how strong Eve is right now. I'm
Okay.
willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. They're telling me Eve is very, very good. However, I always thought of Eve as very feast or famine.
Yeah.
If you want your jungler to be the ultimate carry lord and you think you can go off, Eve is your girl. However, if you fall behind on Eve, champion is not very useful. So I think Elise gives you the most well-rounded package. She can do everything and bring very strong amounts of CC and AP damage.
Okay.
After that, you're kind of opened up and left up with a bunch of like Zac. I think Rek'Sai's still good. I think Lee is good. And I think Olaf is good. And Graves. And Nidalee. And so those, oh God.
And Evelyn.
So I think it's essentially everything else is on the playing
Okay.
field.
Yeah.
So Elise is your #1 for you, and then you kind of drop to the rest of those 6
Yeah.
or so. What about for you, Zyrene?
I think Graves is my S tier right
Okay.
now. I think Graves and Elise and Nidalee in that order. I think they're very highly prioritized. I think Graves' clear speed, the fact that he becomes another carry is very big for these teams. And that's going to reward people like Flash Wolves with Karsa, right? And these aggressive junglers. And I think that that's going to be really interesting for me to watch because these guys who weren't so heavy on like the hard CC ganking and more of like, I need to become a carry for my team. That's gonna
Whereas
be really
someone
cool
like
for them.
Meteos, you're probably not finding on the Graves.
His S tier is Zac.
He'll be playing the Zac and the Elises, the ones that are looking for that will bring the gank power for themselves,
Yeah.
right?
And that sleeper pick for me is that Evelyn may actually end up being S tier just because when you see an Evelyn on the enemy team, what was a winning lane and a shoving lane for you is now a scared lane for
Yeah.
you. And you have to play completely different than you normally do.
All right, that's fair. What do you have to add here in terms of your power rankings for junglers?
I think that Elise is S tier. Then comes like kind of Graves. I think Rek'Sai is just too weak right now.
Okay.
She's too weak right now, especially against like AD champions like Graves, who are winning before. Now they are just winning harder. And I'm not too convinced about the Eve. If you're playing like correctly, then you can just wait for your jungler to actually put pressure on wards, like in the enemy. And she also doesn't have the biggest CC, so you're kind of safe. So I don't expect too much Eve. People are really favoring her, like Clearlove as well. So yeah, I think we kind of summarized
So it sounds like we're in agreement that Elise, Graves, Nidalee are still top tier champions, but after that there's still a fairly large pool of champions available for people to bring in.
Yeah, it's also important to note that Evelyn did receive that buff where
Yes.
she got a cooldown off of her ultimate, especially at early ranks.
Pretty
So,
significant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's actually quite significant. So the frequency in which she's able to have a little bit more defensive power and maybe even dive is a bit higher in that early game.
Absolutely. We've talked about Meteos, and the Zac pick maybe helping him out a bit. We've talked about, Clearlove with the Evelyn maybe being a nice pocket pick for him. Karsa and the Graves and those more carry-oriented junglers like Nidalee being good for him. What about players like Ambition? He's now finally on the world stage. How does he deal with the jungle meta changes?
I'm not 100% sure because he was like really good on Gragas, really good on Rek'Sai, like great playmaker, but he did have a really good Nidalee as well. He was able to farm up and also with his Graves, so I really want to see him do well. I'm not 100% sure if he will completely adapt to it, but I give him the benefit of the doubt because I think that he's a good player and he deserves to be there for sure.
The difference between the jungle position and the other positions for me is that every season the jungle has about 6 viable champions, 6 really, really high tier champions that everyone plays.
Yes.
And so as long as it never really widens too much, just because you need like skirmishing, utility, wave clear, all these qualities are very hard to find in multiple different
There's
champions.
a lot of demands.
Exactly, and so because of that, I never see jungle pool widening too much. Like I still think right now we're still stuck with 6, maybe 7, and so every jungler should feel better about these changes, because it's just the best jungler is going to feel really, really good. Unless they're very specific, oh, this is like the best Elise player in the world, or this is like the best Zac player in the world. Because I think, for instance, Meteos gets a little bit of a step up because he is like very well known for playing that blob. And he making the comeback on Zac, like he was playing it before Rek'Sai got nerfed.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think that that's very good for him. However, for everyone else, everyone already usually plays all these champions, minus a couple people who don't play, I guess, Nidalee or Graves as well as other junglers.
I think Europe is just winning out there because we have, for example, Trick, who's playing Olaf, Nidalee, Graves. He just got the list down. We have Jankos, who's like very aggressive, perfectly fitting style, and I think they can do a lot with the pressure. And really, those people thrive really much off the pressure that they are given, and really like to go into the enemy jungle, just like put their thumb down. And yeah, I think especially those two are like really showing off. Trashy is like really good as well, but especially Trick, who is also playing Olaf, has the champion pool. I think is somebody to watch out for.
The European junglers helped out a little bit. For even more in-depth discussion on the Worlds patch, check out the links below.